Thank you for coming to Dread Pop and Interview with a Reader. I'm Alexis, and I have Steve here. He's our guest of honor this week or this month. And of course, his son, who's gracious enough to join us. Say hi.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Thank you guys. I'm so glad you guys could be here. Super glad you could be here to talk to us about everything. And I guess let's dive in and get started. So, big thing in the community is horror. You and I are part of it. I see us, jumping around different places, different groups. What drew you to being an author in horror?
I mean, it's kind of cliche, but it's kind of always been what I've been interested in. When I was younger and began reading, some of the first stuff I ever read was Hardy Boys, and that always, it was always the mysteries. It was always the who done it and how are they going to get out of some crazy adventure, and the way I read the books, it was almost as though it was like a weekly episode. It's like, oh, like, I finished book one and, book two was available. So it was like, what are they going to get up to next week? And then, so from there, it just kind of progressed. But like where I grew up in a very small town in the middle of nowhere. And we did have a small library, but we didn't have a ton of like dark fiction horror stuff. We didn't really even have much sci-fi or fantasy. So after I read a bunch of the Hardy Boy stuff, I actually saw a book that my neighbor was reading, and she graciously lent it to me, and it was the first time I read a Stephen King book. And I didn't have access to it at the public library or the school library, but right next door, at that time, she had definitely had like every single Stephen King book out at that time. So, she introduced me to that world, and from there it was kind of like, okay, like, I love the dark worlds that he was making, but then also all the kind of auxiliary movies that were coming out around the mid to late 80s.
That's so cool. And that's kind of how I started off in horror, I guess. Mine was Nancy Drew, but then I ran out of Nancy Drew and I'm like, okay, what's next? Hardy Boys. And then I kind of jumped back and found the Three Investigators, but we just had a super small library and, of course, did not cater to horror. So I had what I had. But then, not my neighbor, but somebody in my apartment complex had Stephen King books and I borrowed Insomnia. But yeah, super cool way to dive into it. What made you actually want to start writing? Because, me, I started reading and then I'm like, okay, I love to read people's books, but I'm not in it to write it. So what kind of got you there?
Yeah, mine, I don't know, maybe it sounds kind of lame, but, I have five sisters. Two of them are older, three of them are younger. So growing up, it was just kind of me. And, again, I lived literally where there was nothing. So it was about me entertaining myself. It was about me kind of creating worlds for myself. So when I was like, I don't know, maybe around his age, 7, 8, 9 years old, I started doing like fake sports leagues where I created like all of the players and I kept stats and I wrote stories about, how one of the first ones I ever did was like, these triplet brothers in high school somehow end up on an NHL team and they, lead the team to winning the Stanley Cup. And, it's probably just ridiculous writing back then. But I remember that was kind of how I got into writing stuff. And then from there, it just kind of progressed. And my first novel that I worked on it for like almost a decade because I had a lot of starts and stops. And I just never felt like I was confident enough to try to do what I wanted to do. But it was all kind of precipitated by having to entertain myself, having to use my imagination. And, we didn't really have TV. I had friends, but it wasn't friends I was seeing every day or even every week, sometimes in the winter or summer. So it was just, I needed to create these imaginary worlds to keep myself occupied and entertained, really.
That's so cool. That is so cool that you just, because, these days most of us are watching TV or something. But I remember when I was younger, I was usually reading when I wasn't doing something else. And or exploring with other friends or other things like that. But if I couldn't, of course, what am I going to do? Got to entertain yourself somehow. And I think creating your own stories, that's such a cool thing to just come up with on your own, and then to be here at this point. Very, very cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, just kind of necessity, right? Like, just go and do it. So,
You got to figure something out. Stephen King, of course, one of your first reads, but if you had to look around and think, you know what, this is my horror, I guess, role model, and it doesn't have to be just one, because I know how that is, trying to pick just one, just a couple, I guess, that you look to and think, I wish if I was going to be more, I could be more like them. Not necessarily the writing, just them as a person, I guess.
okay. Oh, geez, I don't know. That seems like a loaded question a little bit. But since almost the beginning of doing any sort of writing stuff, I connected with David Sodergren, who's like a super popular Scottish author. But back then, I connected with him. We were both on the Kindle Reviews review team, and he was doing a lot of movie reviews, and I was doing the book stuff. And we just started, kind of messaging back and forth through that. And then from there, he was like, I had a pretty bad experience with an editor early on with one of my collections, and he was like, "Hey, I can give you an assist here." And ever since then, we've kind of been, each other's sounding boards for everything. And it's one of those weird things. And COVID kind of maybe increased it a bit, but definitely, a really, really good true friend, even though we've never met in person, and it's been, kind of through that digital World Wide Web connection. And then, of course, I mean, if you've followed any of my stuff, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of Andrew Piper. But he was really one of those people who showed everybody what being a really nice, genuine human can be. Everybody has a great story about him who's ever met him. And early on, like even when I was messaging him with some stuff, and early on he was like, there's never a question not to ask somebody, and if I don't have the answer, I'll find somebody who has the answer. Like he was always open and willing to help. And sometimes that just doesn't happen, right? Sometimes there's a almost that, well, what's in it for me mentality that you'll see sometimes in the publishing world. And he was the furthest thing from that. So I would say those two are kind of the my two picks, I guess I would say.
Those are two very good picks, very good ones. And I know both their names, of course. Read all of Andrew's stuff. He's such a nice guy. I never got to meet him myself, but I've seen him out in the community. So nice from what I saw. But yeah, I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
Let's see. So horror-wise, do you do anything else horror? Like, I know some people just read and write and all that fun stuff. I've had a couple of people that play horror video games, horror music, horror art, horror anything else that you do or you're interested in?
I mean, we're getting to a point now where this guy is getting a bit older, so we're starting to be able to watch a bit more of the movies out there. They're not really horror movies, but we just finished watching the last of the 4 new Planet of the Apes series. Both of us are huge Godzilla fans. Both of us are huge Jurassic Park, Jurassic World fans. And the last few Jurassic World movies have really followed the horror movie kind of template of storytelling. I don't really play many video games. It's just not something that we do. Like we play like Mario Kart and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's more the, I guess it'd be the horror movie stuff would be kind of the adjacent horror stuff beyond reading and writing. And then he does a lot of like horror-based art stuff, right? So yeah, he's a super talented artist, but then also like what's it, Poppy's Playtime, like the Huggy Wuggy character, like all of that stuff. He's phenomenal at drawing all that stuff. So yeah,
drawing is such a good art. Like I'm telling you, I could not draw to save my life. Like how it happens, I don't know, but I'm obsessed with it. So
I wish I could draw, because then that would be one of those. It'd be nice to almost do my own book covers, right?
Write
But
your book and then do the art for it. Done.
I don't have that ability, so.
Oh goodness. Do you have any favorite cover artists so far that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean,
It
there's a
doesn't
few
have to be
people.
indie. It could be anyone, of course.
Yeah, but so when I started out, my buddy Mason McDonald did a ton of my covers. I don't even know if he's online anymore anywhere. He uh, he um, he lives in Nova Scotia, like in a very small town in Nova Scotia,
Ooh.
and I know he was one of those people who was really growing, kind of tired of social media, and he was pretty much only on Twitter. And then when it turned to X, I think he kind of left completely. And he has a fantastic collection out called A Time for Monsters. So he did a ton of my early stuff. So I always liked Mason's stuff. But then also like Francois Valancourt, he's phenomenal work. Greg Chapman, Don Noble. Um, I had Carl John Lee do one of my covers too, but that's actually, if people don't know, that's actually David Sodergren. So David does some really amazing artwork, but he doesn't. I don't think he does enough of it. I think people don't realize how good of an artist he is. And then who
Ooh.
else did I see that I love? Like A. Medina, Gemma Moore. She does great work.
Yes.
Geez, now I feel like I'm forgetting people that I shouldn't be forgetting. Who else does amazing work? Don Noble. I can't remember if I said Don Noble already. Um, and then yeah, Ruth. Ruth does some great stuff.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that I'll go. I'll stop with it with that, because I feel like I'm at the point where either I'm going to repeat myself or I'm going to forget somebody,
Just
and I'm going
keep
to
on
feel
going
bad.
and going and going. No, definitely get it. It's just there's so many
Jeff,
talented
Jeff
people.
Farrell,
Every time I
Jeff Farrell.
scroll,
I forgot Jeff Farrell. Jeff Farrell does great stuff. So
yes, absolutely. So speaking of cover art, are you doing anything new that you can talk about? And of course, if you can't, that's completely fine, book-wise.
I mean, I always have a bunch of stuff on the go. I have a few things that are like tentatively finished that I really need to go back and actually finish it up. But right now, earlier this year, I signed with Cody Van Dusen with the Rights Factory. So I'm working on a novel right now that we've already done a few back and forth edits on it, and I'm in the home stretch with that. I was hoping to have it my editing portion finished for her like by July 1st Canada Day, but unfortunately it's taking a bit longer because I don't want to rush the end. It's like a speculative literary work. It's very
Ooh.
different from anything else I've done. And then stuff that I can mention, like there's a book that I've been working on forever, and people who have followed any of my stuff have always been kind of keen for it. It's called 456 Blatchford Drive. It's kind of the third book in the Window in the Ground series, but kind of not. At one point, it was announced in Publishers Marketplace with Darklit was gonna do it before Darklit kind of went the way of the dinosaur there, and so I've got a few things that I'm working on that I'm hoping to get back around to. I have another book in the Father of Lies world. So there's stuff coming. It's just right now it's a weird transition period where it's like I have stuff for commitments for the agent, and then I have stuff that I'm trying to do as well. So it's weird. Like I have Mark Tullius does the Try Not to Die stuff. I have a book coming with him that's supposed to be out next year. So yeah, there's some cool stuff in the works. It's just at this moment, I don't know when my next release will officially be. So because they've been a bit like I had The Invisible come out in October of last year, and then me and Oren put out our poetry collection and artwork stuff like 3 weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago. But I don't know when my next one is going to be yet. So hopefully I'll have some definitive answers for that soon.
I don't know how you guys do this. I would just be exploding at all with all the things. Like there's 1,000 things and none of them are happening right now, but I want to talk about all of them. Like all you authors are better than I am
Yeah.
sometimes.
Well, I think part of it too is the stuff I have on the go. Like, so I had a novel a few years ago called Piece of Me. I have the sequel, like tentatively completed, but then I've let it sit. So now I'm going to have to go back and see. And then, there's a couple parts I know are significantly going to change already. So it's one of those ones where you want to tease out some stuff, but you also don't want to share too much, because then it's much like when you watch a movie trailer and then something happens and then that does not take place in the movie, and you're like I wanted to see
Completely
this.
pivot.
Why
Oh
didn't?
yeah.
And it's, it got edited out, so it's no longer in the movie. So that's kind of where I'm at with some stuff.
That's a good idea, actually. I've never actually thought about that, but that is actually a very good thought about it. I didn't think of it like movies. Don't show it too soon, because what if you decide you want to completely change that part? And then you've got people, it's like, well, I bought this because of this.
Well, and the second book, I actually announced the 3 books in the Piece of Me, the Sermons of Sorrow trilogy. I'd announced all 3 like years ago on Kindle Reviews, and then I got busy doing something else, and I didn't get book 2 out when I thought I would. And then now, since then, Nathan Ballingrad's released like the Crypt of the Moon Spider, and now I'm drawing a blank. The second book is just coming out, Cathedral something. But the second book, the title was actually very similar to the title of what my second book was going to be. So now I'm like, okay, I'm going to scrap the title. I'm going to have to do whole new cover art for it, like all that stuff. So there's always that kind of
Yeah.
stuff that happens, right?
Yeah, that does make sense, of course. I didn't even think about that either, because that would be crazy. Or even you guys just planning something ahead and not even teasing about it. I can't imagine having something ready for like a year and then somebody else releases it. And not that they release it and it's too close to something you've done, but just having that feeling of, oh no, I don't want to like be that. It's like having a kid and naming your kid the same thing. It's just a little
Yeah.
bit weird.
Well, it's weird how there's almost like a cyclical telepathic thing that happens unintentionally, where you'll get 3, 4, 5 big book releases, and they're announced randomly, and they're all released around the same time, but they'll all be very similar. Like that just happened with Craig DeLuise. Man, my memory is not good today. He just had the book about how to survive a horror movie, and at the same time, like Paul Tremblay released the book,
Yeah.
and Grady Hendrix. So like all of these books were kind of like, randomly written, randomly picked up by the publisher, randomly announced for publication, and then when it comes time for them to come out, it's like, wow, all of these are very similar in theme and everything, and even some of the cover art font, which is completely random. And you're like, man, this is like telepathic,
I
it's
mean, when
strange
you
what
got a
happens.
theme, I guess there's only so many different ways you can go with it, and then that sucks for them. I mean, it doesn't super suck for them, but I would hate to be an author that released mine at the same time and then be like, well, what if somebody accidentally buys theirs thinking it's mine or something like that? That's just a chance I would hate to take myself. So,
I think the thing that is kind of the one that I see more frequently is some, like, say 3 vampire books are coming out. That first vampire book comes out and it's a completely unintentional smash hit. You kind of know the other 2, 3 books coming out after that aren't going to hit as hard, because
oh
everybody's
yeah.
going to be like, wow, vampire book number 1 was just amazing. Oh yeah, well, those ones, I don't want to read another vampire book because that vampire book was so good. So sometimes I think it's that periphery of poor timing, unintentional
I
poor
mean, you want
timing.
your book to have the best foot forward. And of course, that's being released when another one's not being released. It sounds like the same similar idea.
Yeah.
No, definitely, absolutely. So next question, kind of with that, do you have like local author things that you do, or is it just you travel more?
Neither of both. Um, uh, so it's weird. Like, so I'm in Edmonton, and we have a really solid local author scene, but not really horror. Um, so like Colin Lavery is a Canadian writer. He used to be here in Edmonton. He's moved out to Vancouver, and there's a couple other Edmonton horror folks and horror adjacent. who I see on Instagram, and sometimes I'll see their books, the chapters here. Um, but I mean, outside of that, it's more like the romance lit fic world, and then we have like Prima Muhammad. Primi is a Locust winner. I think British fantasy winner. Like she's more of the fantasy stuff. I think she's done some post apocalyptic stuff too. Um,
Ooh.
but so for all of that stuff, it's more like I'm kind of like the outlier for it. So there's a couple of bookstores that will carry my stuff, and I go and visit them, and they're awesome, awesome folks. But outside of that, there's not really like author events that are more of something that would be horror specific. Like I know in the U.S. they have a ton of like horror events, Scares That Care, Author Con, Texas Con, Killer Con, like all of that stuff. Here in Canada, last year we just had DreadCon for the first time, and DreadCon's happening again this year coming up.
Ooh.
So, but the problem is in my case, I'm in Alberta. It's in Ontario. It's a super long way to get to. I definitely put in the effort to make sure I got there last year for year one, but for year two, I'm not sure if I will be able to make it to that. But so for a lot of this stuff, it's if anybody's wanting to do that sort of stuff, it's more like the local art markets, the craft fairs. Like I know there's an author down in Cochrane, Shelley Campbell, who's wrote like the Dark Walker series, which is fantastic. She does a ton of like Calgary Horror Con, which is more movie based, but they have some authors and stuff. But I always see her going to like all of the craft markets, the weekend markets, all of that stuff. So some people will put in the groundwork there. I just, for me, honestly, I haven't done either. I mean, sounds kind of lazy, but it's also just I haven't gotten into that world at all so much. So
I mean, you gotta be where you gotta be with your market wise, because for you, it might not be worth it going out to all those over and over again. Because I've talked to a couple of different authors that live in areas where they don't have anywhere
yeah,
local, like even less than you do, local nothing. And I'm like, it wouldn't do to even try to like trek out, take all your stuff, waste all that money, and then
I'm hoping we might have a change because as you've probably seen, like Brian Keene. They're doing the Stand anthology with new stories based off of the Stand world from Stephen King. And one of the launch events is actually Premium Muhammad's going to be here in Edmonton doing one of the launch
ooh,
events. So I'm hoping that that'll kind of maybe open a few more doors where we may have a few more, kind of curated events similar to that.
that would be
Um,
very cool.
but yeah, right now even we have a few like Audrey's books here does do some like open mic nights and stuff like that. But that's definitely more prominent down in like Calgary area. Does a lot more of that.
Very cool. That's very cool. Let's see. Do you go to any of the US based ones or have you?
No, I haven't. I mean, for many years now, our exchange rate has just been horrible. Um,
I
so
don't blame you.
yeah, it's been so. I mean, right now, if I wanted to go down to anything, it's almost double the cost with our exchange rate. And currently, I mean, I don't want to sound political, but right now with
I
the
don't even want to live here. Let's be
political
honest.
scenario happening down there, it just for me and for us as a family, it just seems more of a hassle to try to go there right now. I'd love to get to Scares That Care. That looks like a fantastic event. Same with AuthorCon, and then just in general, I'd love to get down to some of them just because there's so many people I've connected online with over the years that I'd love to be able to meet in person and actually hang out and connect one to one with. So I'm hopefully within the next kind of 3.5 years, 4 years, we'll see some sort of change and
Sure,
go
hopefully.
from there. So yeah,
Because that would be so cool. It would be so cool to have you at one of them, of course, obviously, but
yeah,
and you to get to meet everybody.
yeah.
Let's see. Let us roll into. Okay, we've already talked about Stephen King, your role model. If you had to pick your top three favorite horror books, what would they be?
Top three favorite horror books, eh?
No
I'll probably
pressure.
go. So I'm a huge fan of. Yeah, so I'd probably go. So tough. I'll say for horror, I'll go Last Days from Adam Neville is one of them. Um, it's not my favorite of Adam's books. My favorite of his is Lost Girl, but that's more of like a psychological thriller slash adventure. Yeah, so I have to go with Last Days, though the ritual is fantastic. And then I'll go. Geez, what's going to be number two? Hmm, hmm. Probably, I'll probably go. I'll go One of Us by Craig DeLuey. Um, it's
That's a
um,
good one.
it's a book that is just heartbreaking, and it's completely ageless. It doesn't. You could literally take that and stick it into any time period of any year, and it works so very well. And right now, it works so very well for the current kind of political world stuff. Um, and then I'll go. I should probably go with an Andrew book, right? Because I mean, I'm Andrew through and through. Which one should I go with, Andrew? I'll go. No, we're not going with one of my books. Nobody cares about my book. Um, let's go. Oh, okay. I'll go with. I'll go with the Demonologist. The Demonologist from Andrew Piper is probably the book of his that got me most into him. I mean, it's the first book of his that I read. It kind of is a very, very broad book of showing everything that he kind of brings to the table. And it's the more I've read it, the more I kind of really connect with different aspects of it each time. But just from start to finish, it's pretty much close to being the perfect literary book and horror book. And then when you put those two together, it really kind of is shows that elevation that that book, um, you know, um, brought to the wider world around it. Um, yeah, I'll go with those three. It's tough to pick just three.
Those are three really good ones too. It's I always like to ask, just I don't know what it reveals about somebody, but it's kind of like asking what their favorite food is, which I also don't know what that reveals. It's just fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's something that I feel like a lot of people want to know, right?
Yes,
So
exactly. Like I'm gonna go. I love to look up authors and other people that I follow, and I'm like, what are their top three favorite things? I'm gonna go check them out because especially if I already read the stuff they write, I probably might like the stuff they read. Who knows?
yeah,
But that's actually definitely a good one. Let's see. Okay, so your horror community isn't local. So what is it? What keeps you kind of in the community, active, around, hanging out? I guess in the online one it would be because that's pretty much what it is for me as well, online.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a social media butterfly. I often describe myself as the world's biggest extroverted introvert. Because in real life, my job, I have to talk to people, but honestly, I would just rather never talk to anybody ever. Um, but I'm like that horrible person who every like you have an Instagram story, I think something's funny or cool or whatever, like oftentimes I'm like sending a message or whatever. And often like if somebody like follows me on Instagram and I follow them and I see a couple of things of theirs, I'm like, oh hey, like blah blah blah, like I'm pretty just easygoing and just, yeah, that's cool, like I'll let you know it's cool, because I think there's also a lot of the other end of it where people don't, they see something and even if they think it's cool, they don't say, oh hey, that's cool. So sometimes I will see authors be like, I get no engagement, I get nobody commenting. And I think sometimes people just don't want to, because they feel awkward doing it. And so for me, I'm just like, whatever, I'm going to
Are we
comment
the
on it, I'm
same
going to do
person?
it.
I do the same thing. Like out in public, I'm not mean or anything. I just don't have anything to say to literally anyone, and I would rather just like do whatever I'm doing, go back home. Like I'm a home person. But social media, like, oh, you like this? That's super cool. You made that. Or if I see a post where somebody's talking about a book, even if it's not the best book I've ever read and nobody said anything, I'll like it or be like, hey, that was cool. Have you tried something? Because I
Yeah.
don't want your post sitting for 45 minutes without anything on it. Would
I
make me sad.
I hate scrolling on Instagram and somebody's posted something that they definitely have taken the time. They're proud of something, or like, hey, I got 10 people bought my book at the craft fair, and there's no comments. There's nothing. It honestly, it takes 3 seconds to type congrats because it's
There's
awesome. They've
already
done
enough
something.
negative stuff on top of that.
Achievement, and it's and for many years I've kind of always had a saying in the literary world that I'm involved in: we need less I and more we. You can only be as happy and healthy as possible if everybody's happy and healthy as possible. So I've always been, build everybody up. You did something great, awesome, that's fantastic. Like, I'm
It
very
costs
happy for you.
$0.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And
But
we should be happy whenever anybody else in the horror community has a win, um, because there's so much negativity. Even like the book talk world, there's always so much negativity. If somebody does something awesome, if somebody gets a movie deal, somebody gets a publishing deal, somebody whatever, fantastic. Do I wish it happened for
right?
me? Absolutely, of course we do. But it happened to this person, and that is fantastic.
And then look at it this way. It happened to this fellow indie author. That's one more indie author that's now gotten a foot up and can, go with them. Like, it's getting popular. That's because I know people get really upset when their fandoms become mainstream, because sometimes I do as well. But I'm just like, but that's more eyes, more popularity, which means it's going to be here and sticking around for a lot
Absolutely.
longer.
And it's one of those things. So, like, I actually just got an email this morning from somebody, and we're not connected anywhere on any social medias, but Adam Neville had shared one of my reviews of his books on his newsletter. So this person had emailed me through my website and said, I love reading your review. It's very cool. Have you read this book from this British author? I used to live in, I think it was Australia, now I live in Wales. Thanks so much for this. And that was it. It's they didn't have to do that, but they did it, and that's super cool. And that's an example of let's call it adjacent building up, right? I loved one of Adam's books. I read it. I reviewed it. Adam was like, hey, this guy reviewed it. This is fantastic. He shared it. And from that, I connected with this other person.
I
So
love that.
it's one of those things. And I don't think we don't have any control over the social media algorithm. We really don't, unfortunately. But let's take an example like Nick Roberts. Nick started out, Exorcist House hit, blew up. He got more and more followers, and if he posts something and you go into the comments, chances are you're going to find an author in those comments you've never heard of before. Or maybe you've heard of them, but you've never read them. And if that author says, "Congrats, Nick, on whatever," you're going to be like, "Oh, hey, that author, that's cool." And it could be completely unrelated to anything else, but from Nick's fandom growing, that author just got a new reader because they took the time out. So, I mean, I could be completely off the rails with my thinking of that, but
No,
to me,
you are absolutely correct.
we just need to keep building and building, right?
I have a bazillion million book long TBR, but of course I'm on social media too. And if I see an author post something and I see authors that I don't know commenting or being nice or something, I'm like, ooh, I'm going to go see what they've written. Is it something that I'll like? And I'll pick up the book and go on, because it's not going to kill me to, one more nice author to support them, read their book. And besides, I need something else to read, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be one of those ones where, like, all of our TBRs are super, super long. But it could be one of those things where you're like, okay, I've got this book. I might not get to it for a little bit. But then you see them post something, awesome again or something. You're like, you know what? I'm bumping it up the TBR. I'm going to dive into this one now because this person's being super amazing or whatever, right? So and from there, you then maybe like that book. You post about it. 10 other people are like, hey, I've never heard of this author, but he sounds like a cool guy. This book sounds good. And it's just, it's community growth, right?
That's what I always think when I post a review. I'm like, even if only one person sees it, that's one person that saw it that could be reading it. And what if they have a review that's one person, and then that's more one person's, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. If you could give, I guess, some wisdom to an indie author that's kind of just starting out in the horror world, what do you think it would be? And this could be like a whole little thing wrapped up in it. Don't have to be like a one-off or anything. Whatever you want.
Well, the first one would obviously be don't be a jerk. We see that a lot. Don't be rude to reviewers. And no person reading your book owes you a review, owes you their time. If you send a book out, people may or may not get to reading it. Hey, we're all busy. That's what happens. So I think the biggest one is don't be a jerk. Be a nice person, like we were just talking about. But then outside of that, I think it's it kind of goes back to something I did, something that kind of got ingrained in me previously, and when I was competing as an athlete. Always being, kind of the best version of you can be when you're doing something that you're proud of. And so in this world, I think that means, making sure that you are very, happy with your cover art. You taken the time to showcase, the back matter of the book. Just different little pieces of it. I know, like, it's something we see a lot of where, my first couple releases were, not up to snuff for what I should be. And in the indie world, we have that ability of adjusting and re-releasing and kind of repackaging. If you put out something on a big 5 and it tanks and bombs, they're not going to be like, hey, you know what? Absolutely. We'll have a new editor run through it and we'll change the cover art and go. Like, that's very, very rare that ever happens. But in the indie world, I consider it very much like the punk rock ethos of, you're the curator from start to finish. So make sure everything is as, fantastic as you want it to be. And, and really, as cliche as it sounds, when release time comes, it's no longer yours. You've done everything you can. You've raised that kid up through graduation, and now they're out into the real world. And if that means somebody's giving it 1 star, that means that person didn't like it. And okay, that's their connection with it. Once the book's out in the world, you no longer have any skin in the game for the reaction. And some books will hit, some books won't. Some books will be for one reader, some books won't be. So just accept that you do your best, and then you move on and do your best again, and then move on and repeat.
It's just like cooking or anything else. Like, your first run through might not be the best one, but you're eventually going to get there. Yep. And another thing is 1-star reviews are not always bad. I do not know how many books that I have purchased that have been a 1-star review, and I'm like, okay, I need to know why this book just pissed this person off. Like,
yeah,
let me know.
I did a couple videos. I can't remember how many videos I did it on. I did maybe, I would say, 3 or 4 videos on TikTok a while ago of reading 1-star reviews of my own work that I thought was like really beneficial 1-star reviews. And then I kind of stopped because, again, reviews are for readers, so I didn't want anybody to think I was picking on anybody. I never gave names or anything like that. It was never anything like that. It was just a case of like, hey, like, I'm a reader and reviewer too. If I came across this 1-star review of this book, I'd be like, I want to read this book. So yeah, there's so many 1-star. There's a couple books I love, and I picked them up because of somebody posted their DNF review on it, right? And I was
we used to live here. So many people hated that book. Hated it. And I was like, okay, I got to crack it open. I literally sat down in my kitchen and finished it in 3 hours.
Yeah. See, shamefully, I haven't got to that yet. It's deep on my TBR.
But it's so crazy. And then I see books all the time that I'm like, oh, that was cool, but somebody else is carrying it to the ends of the world. And I love that because somebody loved it. That means that author is getting that boost that they couldn't get from me, which doesn't make me feel bad because somebody else did. And I don't know. I just love that.
You don't come on. You can head up.
Okay, I'm gonna end up wrapping this up, of course. Thank you guys for both being here. Thank you, Oren, for being our little guest star. I don't get many second guest stars, but
hold it up. His friend gave him a really cool 3D printed dragon the other day.
I wish I had mine or knew where mine was because I have a couple. I have a little black one that's little tiny, and he does that too. They're so fun to play with. Yeah. I like the texture.
It's the 3D printed stuff. The articulation that they can do in that it blows my mind. Like it doesn't. I know how the 3D printing stuff works. I know the process. You can visually see it happening.
And it just doesn't compute though.
I'm just like, how did that end up coming together? Oh, I think he's grabbing another. Bring that over real quick. This is his big one that he got a couple years ago at one of the markets here.
Ooh, that one is very, very cool. Mine is only about this long, and they were themed off of the Fourth Wing, so there's a black one and there's a gold one, but super, super cool. And just the way they flex, I'm like, I know, and like you said, you see it, you know the process, but how?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. And then it's like, they're like individual pieces, but they're already together, but yeah, I don't know.
Future, but no, seriously, same thing. I watch the videos on the 3D printing all the time, but I still don't understand how you end up with this object that's not just stiff or that you have to put together.
The one market that we go to on some weekends, there's a guy there who has like a 3D printed booth, and that's all he does. And he literally has a 3D printer there, and he's printing stuff all day, like, there. And you watch it, and you're just like, okay, how is that? What? Like it just, it's. Yeah.
I remember you remember the little pins that you could buy that connect the tubes and you could build something. I remember when that was just what was happening, and now we have this.
Yeah.
Insane. So insane.
Yeah.
Also, that is super cool. Thank you for showing me that. If I can find mine later, I will send you pictures and you can show me.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
But thank both of you guys for being on here. I'm not going to keep you any longer. I'm sure it's getting later on for you guys. And thank both of you guys.
Yeah, no, thank you.